Welcome back to our anime show. I'm Binge Monster.
And I'm a green queen who totally went to take a sip of her coffee immediately when we started the episode. I don't get that.
Oh my gosh, it looks like we have a little guest star in the back.
Oh, yes! That's my man. Hey! That's my.
It's like, what? I'm just, I'm sitting here.
I think he's looking at you. Yeah. Oh, that's the best guest star. That's my little man Otter. I know, I love. Don't be. I know, Mama loves you.
Oh. Well, we're recording this episode in the early morning, so mine are, you know, waking up faces. But you're a morning person compared to me. You're definitely a morning person compared to me, right?
I am, yeah. So I mean, it's like our 8 a.m. right now ish, and I set my alarm for 7 a.m. But I woke up before my alarm. I woke up before it.
Oh my gosh, that is so wonderful of you to have that spirit. Speaking of spirit, today we're going to be talking about Windbreaker, which is, at least from my perspective, taking the anime community by storm. Um, getting many comparisons to another anime that a number of seasons ago also kind of took the anime community by storm, Tokyo Revengers, which I think is a pretty fair comparison.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think Tokyo Revengers, even before it came out, had taken the anime community by storm for people that read it, because a lot of people that read it were being like, you should start reading this, it's so good. It had so much hype before it even came out. And Windbreaker, for some reason, already to compare them, I guess, I didn't even know it was coming out, and then someone put me on and was like, no, you got to watch this, and I did, and I was like, wow, you were so right. So yeah, I think in their respective seasons are definitely kind of taking charge of the anime season.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, one of the things that I did immediately after watching the first season of Tokyo Revengers was kind of reflect on how it got so popular. And I think we did a whole episode on it a number of seasons ago, talking a little bit about kind of like the biker gang culture in Japan in the
Mm-hmm.
80s, and and so forth. So I mean, I think if you're curious about that, you know that culture and how that culture contributed to kind of the rise of Tokyo Revengers, go back and watch that episode. um, but I think one of the really interesting things that happens when you have a show like this is that it does a really phenomenal job of captivating both male and female audiences. And again, I think we talk a lot about that in the other episode, but I just highlighted it because I think it's one of the things that has allowed it to gain some really quick um, popularity. And I think I was checking the stats right before we started the podcast episode, and I think it's already in kind of like the 400s ranking of all time anime in my anime list. And we're, what
Oh,
are we, like 8 episodes in?
to Windbreaker, yeah,
Yeah, is it eight
yeah,
or is
eight
it
episode.
nine? Yeah,
It's
okay.
8.
Yeah. So we're not even one full season in, and we're already having conversations, which I think are quite justified, about whether or not this anime is better than Tokyo Revengers, even though we're like nowhere near deep into the story as Tokyo Revengers is. So I think that's what we wanted to talk about today. Maybe you could start by giving a really quick synopsis of like Windbreaker, and then we go from there.
Sure, yeah. Windbreaker is it follows the main character, who is Sakura. They call him Sakura. So he comes to this new town, and his old town, it was like everyone kind of like made fun of him or like beat him up, and he was just kind of like always put in a position to be a bad kid. Like everyone was just like, you're bad, you're trash, whatever. So he comes to this new town ready to kind of take over or just like, assert himself. But at the same time, you find out very quickly that he's actually a very good person. And so that catches the attention of this gang called, I now am blanking on the name of our gang.
Bufurin? Is that what there is?
Bufurin. Yeah, Bufurin. Bufurin,
Okay.
yeah. So he gets the attention of Bufurin, the good guys, the cool guys, as we've coined. And you soon find out that, oh, this is a gang, and you kind of get this idea that they're a typical gang. But you very quickly find out that they are not a typical gang. They are basically like the high school kids that take care of the town. So if anything bad is happening, if anyone comes into town and starts causing mischief, they handle it. I don't know if vigilantes is the right word, but they're like vigilantes of justice. They sort of like take care of the town that they belong to, so they like protect people, and yeah, they kind of take on sort of like an authoritative role where if anyone comes into the town and is not being good to people in the town or is causing mischief or what have you, they just like handle it. So that's kind of like the synopsis of Windbreaker, and I think we'll get into kind of more of some of the episodes and specifics that are out so far. But that's just the overarching idea.
And I know it's like to create a sense of story and to make things interesting, but it's always funny to me how absolutely incompetent or just not present police are in these kinds of stories.
Yeah,
Like you gotta wonder why they leave it to a bunch of high schoolers to be able to um you know strengthen the community, protect the community, and so forth. It's really interesting that's the way that this turned, and I think that's also one of the reasons why this anime is a little bit of a breath of fresh air from again kind of a type of story that we're not used to, right? Like we have seen biker gang like stories of, we already mentioned Tokyo Revengers, but it was a huge kind of trope in the 80s. There are lots of different series or at least crews of characters that kind of belong to these gangs. Like even Yu Yu Hakusho has my boy Kuwabara, who's kind of like in that in that kind of a group, right? So I think um they're doing a really phenomenal job taking a very fresh spin at this kind of story. And yeah, I'm really excited about where this is going to go. I wanted to start with a couple of questions to really ground the conversation a little bit, um, where hopefully by the end of the episode we can kind of definitively say one way or the other whether we kind of think this anime is better than Tokyo Revengers. Um, because I see that, I don't know if you've seen that like all over the internet. I see so many people saying, "Oh yeah, this is like way better." Or, oh, this is like it's still too early. Like I think it's still a really interesting question that's very much brewing in our community.
yeah. I mean, I would agree. I it's so funny. I have not really been seeing that myself, but I have been not really online in general. But even in watching it with my boyfriend Al, like we can't help but compare them because
Mm-hmm.
like Windbreaker is basically the second of its kind.
Mm.
Like, and meaning that Tokyo Revengers was kind of like the first of its kind, at least to take like this sort of popularity and like the main stage. I feel like it's arguably they are the first and second of their kind, and they're both really successful. But again, like Windbreaker totally is one of those animes where I was like, oh yeah, it looks cool, whatever, and then everyone was like, no, you need to watch this, and I was so happy I did because it is very, very good.
Well, let's
Although,
start.
you know what?
Oh no, go
Sorry, I
ahead.
don't I don't know if you knew this. I never finished Tokyo Revengers.
The anime or the manga? Because you started to read it, right?
I started to read it. I never finished season 2 or the
Oh, okay.
movie. Right? Or is it the same
Oh,
thing?
oh, I don't think I even saw the movie.
Is there a movie? Is there a Tokyo Revengers movie?
Is there a Tokyo Revengers movie?
Isn't there a Christmas Rumble movie? Or is
I
that
don't
season
know.
2?
That might be season 2.
That might be season 2. I don't know. It all escaped me at some
Apparently,
point.
there is a Tokyo Revenger. Well, there's a live action movie. That's
Oh,
something that
maybe
I'm seeing.
that's it. That might be a live action show, actually.
Mm,
That's crazy. I forgot they did that.
yeah. I mean, they were
Wow.
really riding its popularity to try to get as much money from that as they could.
And rightfully so.
Yeah, it is really good. Well, why don't we look kind of objectively at a couple different points? Let's start with the music. What is your take on the difference between the music in Tokyo Revengers versus Windbreaker?
Sure. So, like, as far as Tokyo Revengers, I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember. Like, I watched that I watched season 1 as it was coming out in what, 2021? Maybe.
Oh gosh, now you're making me. Let's
I
see,
think 2021 or 2022 at latest. So like
2021. Yeah.
yeah, 2021. I don't remember. I've never gone back to watch it necessarily. I don't remember particularly loving the music. I don't remember particularly not liking the music. But I will give context to something that I know. Obviously, I'm watching Windbreaker, and Windbreaker has, I think, an opening that I like, and I think the music in Windbreaker has been pretty good so far, especially the given circumstances and what we're doing. I have like very general thoughts. Like, I'm not really picking up on the music in either of them. I don't feel like they are shows that are really like, for example, in Kaiju, the music and the vocal life is not the right word, but like the sounds of that captivate me. But like, I don't feel that way, I think, for either of these. I'm not captivated by the sounds. They're not grasping me. They're not enhancing in any particular way that's like drawing my attention.
Hmm.
But are you noticing anything with them?
No, obviously there's a little bit of recency bias because I haven't watched Tokyo Revengers in quite some time. In fact, I've read so much more of it, and so it's hard for me to even remember like what is season 1 and what is season 2 from the anime because I'm much farther ahead in the manga than I am in the anime. Um, and so from that perspective, like I think when you, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but this has always been my experience. When you watch, let's say, the first season of an anime or the second season of an anime, but then you read ahead to the equivalent of maybe 2 or 3 or 4 seasons, like after wherever the anime is currently caught up to, you start to, I don't know, like build in your mind or in your imagination what that story is. I don't know, like whether it's sound or I just use my imagination far more in the manga than I do in the anime because I don't really have to. It's all kind of spelled out and there's music in place. So I don't know. Maybe I'm a little bit too far removed from Tokyo Revengers to really remember how much of an impact the music really had. I feel like I remember that the opening song really slapped for whatever reason,
Oh,
right? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That one
Um,
was good.
and quite frankly, I don't really, even though I just watched an episode a couple days ago, remember the Windbreaker opening. It doesn't like stick with me as much.
No.
Yeah. But as far as like the music in the episode is concerned, I think both anime do a good job using music to further the story, to indicate tense and then non-tense situations. It's certainly not distracting. But I would agree with you. I don't know that like music necessarily stands out to me tremendously in Windbreaker, at least right now, um, as something that like really, I don't know, does something in a special way. I think it like does what it
Yeah.
needs to do.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
feel like either of these are really about the music or about they're both seemingly to me so character driven
mm-hmm.
that like I just am concerned with what they're thinking. But as far as so both of these being about, gangs and their violence and their fights and who has turf over who and whatnot, how are you feeling about both of them as far as the fight animation?
Yeah, I. It's interesting because I think that Tokyo Revengers has a very distinct art style
Mm-hmm.
that was a little bit difficult in the beginning for me to get used to. Um, Kind of like, I don't know, with their noses, and I don't know if that makes sense, but they don't draw those characters like, maybe conventionally I'm used to seeing,
Mm-hmm.
and I got over that pretty quickly. But even the fight scenes, I don't know, like they're more fluid by far, at least from my perspective in Windbreaker. I
Mm-hmm.
think that, like, it's difficult too though, because I've seen the stakes raised higher in Tokyo Avengers, which for me is a slightly darker show from a violence perspective, at least, where there's a lot more blood, and the stakes get raised with the introducing weapons into the fray when they're fighting. So there are some other elements that are present in Tokyo Revengers that I've not yet seen in Windbreaker. And by the way, I'm at least one episode behind, so maybe that's changed, but I doubt it. But I kind of like that though, because it's a little bit more consumable, and they put more of an emphasis in the hand to hand combat. And what I really like is, and this is just my quick observation, is that truly every character in Windbreaker so far has kind of a different fighting style, um, that I've seen so far, that really emphasize a lot about, I think, their personality. And yeah, I mean, I think it's not just like a straight up brawl. I feel like there's some legitimate technique behind some of these characters and how they fight specifically that is really exciting and fun to watch. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's my take. Uh, yeah, I don't know, like, if I could give it to one side or the other, right? Like, I don't know. What about you?
So I would agree. I mean, it's kind of hard. Like, definitely, I'm actually hearing you in that Tokyo Revengers has a bit more higher stakes at this point. Like, it does feel a little bit more like it is life or death,
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in Windbreaker, it gives the same feeling as Haikyuu in a way, where I'm like, it feels like it's life or death, but I know it's gonna be kind of okay. Like, I get that feeling from Windbreaker right now as far as where we're at. Um, but honestly, I think that I I I have to say, I think I like how they're animating the fights in Windbreaker more.
Mm-hmm.
However, I feel like Tokyo Revengers is definitely more grounded in, they're not like experts, or the people that are experts that can like throw kicks or throw like these high technique things are like very limited. Like, they're Mikey and like maybe one other guy, right? So it's like
Mm-hmm.
these are not trained kids.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in Windbreaker, it's very exciting to watch, but like, I'm like, okay, we're all like martial artists, like, we, you know what I mean? Like, and they all have their distinct styles. So just as a viewer, it's very enjoyable to watch if you like combat, if you like martial arts. It's very interesting, and we could probably do a whole episode just picking out what style each of them are kind of pulling from, and they're pulling out some crazy moves. I mean, you definitely saw the like that question mark kick. I've been trying to figure out how to do that since I saw it. He like brings it up and then like brings it back down. I was like, how does someone do that? The trajectory of the hip control. So it's very exciting and I really like it. But I do have a hard time
Believing.
making it feel grounded. Yeah, like it
Yeah,
doesn't really feel as grounded, even though cinematically it's quite stunning in Windbreaker.
it's
You
just
know what I mean?
funny. Oh, I 100% agree with you, right? Like, I think that, like, from that perspective, yeah. I mean, it's somewhat, Tokyo Revengers is somewhat yet less fantastical, and yet there's the time travel element to it, which
Oh, right.
which definitely
Oh, right.
doesn't allow me to be fully grounded in it. But at the same time,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
no, I mean, I never watched a fight in Tokyo Revengers and went like that feels unrealistic. I don't know. I
Yeah.
right. Whereas
Yeah.
like a couple episodes ago, we saw that kid with the like jewelry, essentially like a kung fu master. It seemed right. I don't know. Right. Like I mean, it's just what it looked
Yes.
like. But um, I think what they're really doing a great job of is, I think that the individual members of the ensemble of the show are far more fleshed out by this point. And they use these fights as a way to articulate each character's story or tell a little bit more. I think in a way that maybe wasn't so necessary in Tokyo Revengers, and so Tokyo Revengers didn't really take that approach. They focused far more around kind of the main character and the underlying plot of trying to save the girl, and so they're don't get me wrong, they have quite a large ensemble themselves in Tokyo Revengers, but
Yeah.
I feel like this far into episode, what are we, episode 8, I know a
Mhm.
lot about each of these characters, and I think they've done it in a really masterful way because I'm not bored with it. There is a lot of
Mm.
um what is the word, expose, what is the word, like where,
Exposition?
yeah, exposition, like there's a lot of, I don't know if I want to call them flashbacks, but there is a lot of storytelling, and it's not done in a way that bothers me, and that is not usually the case. I'm usually like, okay, like let's get on with it. We'll learn more later, but that's not really happening here.
Wait, wait. Oh, in Windbreaker. Right, right, right.
Yeah,
Like you're
yeah, and
not
when
saying like, "Okay, get on with it."
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
enjoying the pace at which we're learning about these characters through fighting, and I think they've done it in a really good way.
Well, yeah. I mean, just to really echo what you were saying, I think that the notion feels, I keep saying this, but it feels something like a sports anime where while they're playing the sport, I'm watching the character grow. So like
Hmm.
while in Windbreaker, while they're fighting, I'm watching them have like like go through like mini arcs of like coming out of the fight as a different person, coming out of the game as a different person. Like that is very interesting to watch. Whereas I don't feel like we see that in Tokyo Revengers, but at the same time, there is such, I think there's a even, I mean, there's such a big ensemble in Tokyo Revengers, even more than Windbreaker, that like it's so complex and it's a little bit more like heady in a way because you're trying to follow the trajectory, and with the time travel there's just a lot more, so that's really engaging in that way. And also, Windbreaker, I appreciate that they use the fighting as a way to like progress the characters through their whatever it is they're going through.
I'm trying to figure out if 8 or 9 episodes in, if I think the storyline is better in Tokyo Revengers up to this point than in Windbreaker. And if
Hmm.
my quick analysis is that Tokyo Revengers has all of the ingredients to present a more complex, a more robust storyline, just given all of the subtle nuances of trying to save the girl, going back in time, you know, uh, having to insert yourself into a gang, and to your point, the life or death almost every episode. Like we have no idea what's gonna happen to this poor kid. Uh, and and yet, like, what's interesting about Windbreaker is uh, they kind of start with almost like a tournament arc. And it's not
Yeah.
exactly a tournament arc, right? In the
Yeah.
traditional sense, but you get what I'm where I'm coming from, right? Where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
for those of you who've never watched it, I mean, it's somewhat of a spoiler, so if you want to be spoiler proof, you can skip this, but they start out really introducing some of the characters by setting up a conflict with a rival gang, and they fight each other in not in the same way that rival gangs would fight in Tokyo Revengers, where it's just an all-out brawl and a war, but it's very 1v1, 5 1v1s in a row, and you learn about a lot of the main characters and so forth. But it feels, because of that structure, that 1v1 structure that everyone kind of respects, it feels like a match. Like, I think that's also why you brought up, interestingly, you brought up Haikyuu, where that is a sports anime, right? Like, so I think from a storyline perspective, they're fundamentally different. You've already given the synopsis, just for the sake of clarity on like how the main character, the main boy, got into this mess and how he joined this gang that, with like maybe some intention of being a hard ass, but actually discovers that they're these, peacekeepers of the community, and starts to embrace that. But I don't know. They feel like I get the common theme of gang, like, right, like the biker gang type of a thing, but these storylines are quite different, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, like, what's your take?
I get tripped up to even answer that question because in my head, even though we posed this episode as that question, I feel like they are sort of incomparable in a sense. Um, I remember being bored a little bit or confused with Tokyo Revengers in the beginning. I
Mm,
remember myself maybe 4 episodes, 3 or 4 episodes in, kind of being like, all right, like what's going to happen? But I think that that lends itself to a greater, larger story. Like they're really building slowly in Tokyo Revengers for like, you know, shit to hit the fan. Whereas in Windbreaker, yeah, I think we jump right in. So, I mean, even storytelling wise, they're doing such different things
yeah,
that it is really, really hard to compare them. And I would be curious to know Windbreaker's like what are how many manga chapters are there? When did this start coming out? Is it going week to week? Whatever. But like Tokyo Revengers, we know one is finished, so it is a complete story that is going to end and has a, I can only imagine, very specific arc um that I can feel sort of from the beginning. But Windbreaker, I'm not exactly sure. So I would be curious, but Windbreaker feels like a really exciting first season, and we're definitely not at the part where we know that it could go on to be anything else. I mean, in fact, like I'm kind of watching Windbreaker now, and while I'm very excited about it, it's very good. I'm like, but where do we go from here? So
mm,
like either they'll really surprise me, or I'll kind of be like, oh, really? You know?
yeah,
But I'll say that. I'll say Windbreaker for me has a really strong start. I feel like I would recommend Windbreaker potentially to someone who's newer to anime, where like I want them to just kind of be excited about something. But
mm-hmm.
I would recommend Tokyo Revengers to somebody who's like looking to invest in like a really fulfilling story, just because we have more source material. We know it gets very good.
That's a really good point. I have no idea where it's going to go after this little kind of arc, and there's a lot they're going to need to do to keep our attention after starting out so strong. I think you also make a really good critique of Tokyo Revengers, where there were a lot of people that were kind of confused as to what was going on, and if you weren't really truly following it, you'd miss a lot of context and get lost pretty quickly, especially because of the time travel element to this. And kind of just understanding some of the like nuances of the politics of the situation, even within the gang. So yeah, it's you posed kind of an interesting question. I think one of the other things that I wanted to talk about was the difference between the two main characters. And
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason, I am forgetting his name. Is it Takemichi?
Sakura? Oh,
No.
Takemichi.
Yeah, Takemichi, and is it Tsukamichi or
Sakura.
Takemichi? Okay, I guess it is Takemichi. Um,
Takemichi.
yeah, and how different of a character these two main characters really are, and
Yes.
if I'm trying, because I was thinking about, like, oftentimes when it comes to anime, the main character is, at least in my experience, a large reason why people end up liking a show or not.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you get lucky and ensembles end up stealing the show, but more often than not, the main character drives things. And what's really interesting about Sakura is like he is kind of like a male tsundere, right? Like he's which is a typically a trope that you see in female characters in shonen, where they start
Mm-hmm.
out very aggressive and then slowly over the course of the series they soften and in terms of their personality or their outbursts and
Mm.
you know they're very defensive and aggressive in the beginning and you watch the onion peel, right? And we
Mm-hmm.
you don't often see that in a main character in a shonen. That's not typical. It's
In a main
usually,
character, no.
yeah, you
Yeah.
usually see someone who's like extremely weak, damn near pathetic, who eventually grows into become something of a monster or a god in their universe, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, or conventionally, like relative to other people around them, not talented, or right, like something like that.
Oh
And
yeah. Oh
and
yeah.
Takemichi is a really wonderful example of that, where he's
Mm-hmm.
very much weak in a world of strong men, but there's something
Oh yeah.
about him, right? Like you see, but with Sakura, he's super strong out of the gate, which also breaks some of those shonen tropes. Like that's not norm. Although they're kind of hinting at him having a large potential for growth, right? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
he's starting out really strong, but seems like that ceiling is not really, you know, is pretty high. So I I think from a trope perspective, Sakura really breaks some of the traditional molds, and that's really refreshing. I enjoy that. I enjoy that spin because it is often quite frustrating to watch the main character be so weak in the beginning. And I don't know,
Mm.
8, 9 episodes in, I like Sakura more as a character than I like Takemichi. But also, Takemichi had a lot going on. I felt for the kid. You know what I mean? So,
People were dying around him.
and they were.
I think something very interesting that you said that is actually reminding me, when we're talking about Takemichi, he's so lovable because like you want your guy to win. You want your guy to get over this. You want him to be strong. And I know that a lot he gets clowned a lot online by other dudes because he cries so much. I mean, literally, when I was preparing for this episode, Cheeks was like, "Yo, but the one thing I hate about Takemichi, why are you always crying all the time? Blah 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 blah." And was very passionate about this, and I'm like, "Oh man, like we could talk about fragile masculinity all we want. We could talk about how men crying makes people uncomfortable, and then we could talk about those layers, but." I think to your point, that's something that I think a lot of like super masculine men were not excited about. But to your point, the ensemble of characters and being able to kind of like identify with the character you liked, but without it being so archetypal, I think was something very exciting about Tokyo Revengers. And we've talked about this on the podcast, like the manga sales were through the roof even for women who were just so excited, oh, all the bad boys and like, oh, do you want this? Do you like the soft bad boy? Do you like the bad boy that's good at this? Do you like the leader bad boy? Like, all these little facets without making them feel like an archetype. And I mean, even Takemichi himself, I feel like he was that archetype of like a shonen protagonist, if you will, to like where they start off like nothing. But there was something different about him from my perspective too. Like just seeing him go back and forth. Like he wanted to give up early on. And then like the second episode, he's like, you know what? Actually, I don't want to do this. But then something reminds him of like the true purpose of his intentions. And when we're talking about Sakura, you bring up a really great point that I didn't even pick up on that. Yeah, he's such a hard exterior, and we're gonna slowly see him. Hopefully, I mean that's his trajectory. We're gonna hopefully slowly see that kind of break down. And I don't normally see that with male characters. That is kind of a exclusively like not exclusively, but that is more of like a female character thing. But I don't know. What do you think about that? Because oh, sorry, one last point I wanted to make before I pose the question to you. Do you feel like characters in Windbreaker are very archetypal? Or do you feel like they are whole, complete characters?
I feel like it's a combination of both, really. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I forget the name of the guy that he's like under, that Sakura like gets organized into the leader with the shark teeth. But that guy definitely
Mm.
plays an archetypal role that you often see. He's kind of like the Tanaka of the group. If you've ever watched Haikyuu, that's an archetype that I think we see really well, and I think the like strong kid with the psycho eyes is also like an archetype I you see sometimes, uh where I don't know that they have like necessarily a Napoleon complex. I don't know if I've ever really seen that, but they're usually like the shorter, like like luck in Black Clover, right? um
Oh, yeah, yeah.
like the
Yeah.
that's like a that's not unusual, and interestingly they're often blonde. Like I don't know, like I feel like I've just seen that kind of
Mm-hmm.
before. But don't get me wrong, I mean ultimately I think that even though some of these characters really might fall into somewhat of an archetype, I think that they're really well fleshed out,
Mm-hmm.
as much as they can be 9 episodes in.
Yeah.
So
I would agree. I would agree. I mean, especially since we're kind of seeing, like I said, because we're seeing their character development through the fights and through what's happening right now, this big training arc. I would agree with you. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's definitely something that is debatable though. Even though
for
I
sure.
have stated my opinion, even though you've stated your opinion, I think it's something that is debatable. Um because like I could see somebody clowning the in Windbreaker the character, the blonde one who doesn't take part of the training arc or the training
Oh,
tournament or
the
but is a part of it and is best friends with Sakura.
mm-hmm.
Like I could like that is so Zenitsu, it's not even funny, right? Like
Yeah,
that is just so that character and like I'm ready to see something change with him that
yeah.
I'm kind of waiting for. Like I'm like, okay, like when are we gonna stop this little charade or is this just gonna be you? I highly doubt it, but like for right now it's like you're just this, I don't know, comedic relief kind of. I don't
Yeah,
know, maybe
he
they like
might be
that in
playing that
Japan.
role. Yeah.
Um whereas like in Tokyo Avengers there was nobody really doing that. I don't think. So I think it's up for debate even though I do feel like both have really fleshed out characters that are engaging and different and unique. Yeah, but definitely the main characters are completely different. And it really kind of is like what do you like more? Do you want to see your boy come from nothing in in the way where he's weak or do you want to see, you know, someone break down and become like a man?
I think that there are um just I think like if I was to answer the question of like which one is more enjoyable to watch, at least for me up until this point, I think it really depends on the kind of show that I'm looking for, right? Tokyo Revengers is so complex. There's a lot of different plot points going on, and at least 8 or 9 episodes in, I don't know that I've been hooked enough into the show uh to say that like this is going to be great. I think it like you have some semblance of that though. Like you can guess that it's probably going to be great, but I think the I'm going to give the edge to Windbreaker as the more enjoyable show because I don't you don't have to think as much. You don't have to track as many different plot lines all at the same time. I think some of the characters are a little bit less annoying in the beginning. I don't know. Like I think to your point, for like newer fans or for people who just want to put something on and sit back and kind of enjoy something, I think Windbreaker might be a little bit better. But if you're looking for something really plot driven, that's kind of like a longer term investment, maybe a slower burn, yeah, then maybe Tokyo Revengers. It just depends on I think what you're looking for, right? That's my take.
I really co-sign with your take if I'm being honest. I co-sign with that because I think as a person, 8 episodes in, I'm definitely enjoying Windbreaker more than I did 8 episodes into season 1 of Tokyo Revengers.
Yeah,
But it will change once the season is over. Windbreaker
right.
season is over. It will change if we get a second season of Windbreaker. Like I'm confident it will change.
Yeah. Same.
But right now, I totally agree. I think it's more enjoyable. And I would be more inclined to recommend Windbreaker to a newer anime watcher. It is definitely, something that we'll keep tabs on. And again, Windbreaker is still kind of taking the community by storm. So we will be tapped in with all Windbreaker updates. But this has been our anime show, and I've been a Green Queen.
And I'm Binge Monster.